The notification appeared on my screen at 2:17 a.m., alerting me that someone had accessed my client feedback database using my credentials while I was asleep at home. I stared at the email alert from our case management system, coffee growing cold in my hand. Dominic Juniper, 42 years old, income partner specializing in corporate litigation at one of Chicago's most prestigious law offices. 20 years of practice had taught me to trust my instincts, and right now every instinct screamed that something was wrong. The timestamp showed the access occurred at 2:14 a.m., 3 minutes before the system sent me the automated security notification. I had been home since 8 p.m. the previous evening, nowhere near the office. My keycard records would prove that. I pulled up the detailed access log. Someone using my login credentials had downloaded 17 client feedback forms from our internal database. Forms I had never seen before. Forms that supposedly contained my responses to partner evaluations about associates and junior partners. The problem was simple. I had never filled out any feedback forms in the past 6 months. I scrolled through the downloaded files. Each form bore my digital signature and employee ID. The responses were detailed, professional, and completely fabricated. Worse, they contained criticisms of colleagues I had never made and recommendations for personnel decisions I had never been asked to provide. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone. The office building's security system would have records, camera footage, keycard swipes. Someone had either stolen my credentials or gained administrative access to create these documents. The feedback forms weren't random. Each one targeted specific attorneys who had been competing for the same partnership track I was on. Each one contained subtle but damaging assessments that could derail careers and influence partnership decisions. I opened my laptop and logged into the firm's secure portal. The system accepted my credentials normally. No indication of compromise. No forced password reset. Whoever had done this possessed sophisticated access to our internal systems. The most disturbing detail emerged as I examined the metadata. These forms had been created over the past 3 months. Someone had been systematically building a false record of my supposed feedback, timing each entry to coincide with actual partnership review periods. I checked my calendar. The quarterly partnership meeting was scheduled for next week. The same meeting where these fabricated feedback forms would likely be presented as of my professional assessments. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Check your email. We need to talk." The email contained a single attachment, a screenshot of one of the fake feedback forms, with a message that made my blood run cold. "This is just the beginning. More will surface unless you withdraw from the partnership consideration. You have 48 hours. I realized someone had been planning this for months, carefully constructing a digital paper trail designed to destroy my reputation and eliminate me from partnership consideration. The question was, who had both the access and the motive to orchestrate such an elaborate scheme? The notification light on my phone continued blinking, indicating more messages were arriving. The messages kept arriving throughout the night. Screenshots of additional fake feedback forms. Copies of forged email chains where I supposedly criticized colleagues' work performance. Digital breadcrumbs of a conspiracy I had never participated in. I drove to the office at dawn, my mind racing through the possibilities. The firm's 23rd floor was empty except for security. I needed access to the server logs before anyone else arrived. Our IT department maintained detailed access records for the document management system. Every login, every file creation, every modification was tracked with timestamps and user credentials. If someone had used my account to create these fabricated forms, there would be The server room required 2-factor authentication. My keycard worked normally. The biometric scanner accepted my fingerprint. Inside, rows of humming servers contained the digital backbone of our practice. I located the terminal for the document management system and began pulling access logs. The data painted a disturbing picture. My user account had been active during times I could prove I gained turov, was elsewhere, court appearances, client meetings, depositions in other cities. Someone had either cloned my credentials or gained administrative privileges to impersonate my digital identity. I printed the logs and cross-referenced them with my calendar entries. On March 15th, while I was in depositions for the Morrison class action in Milwaukee, my account had created 3 feedback forms. On April 2nd, during a client presentation in Detroit, someone using my credentials had accessed personnel files for 6 associates. The pattern was methodical. Whoever was doing this had intimate knowledge of my schedule and had been careful to only when I had verifiable alibis. They wanted to create while ensuring I could prove the impossibility of my involvement. My phone rang. Clark Stanfield's name appeared on the screen. He was our firm's compliance advisor, responsible for internal ethics and document integrity. We had worked together for 8 years, building the firm's class action practice from a small department into a major revenue center. Dominic, we need to talk. Can you come to my office? I'm already in the building. Give me 5 minutes. Clark's office occupied a corner of the 19th floor, with windows overlooking the Chicago River. He had been with the firm for 12 years, earning partnership through his expertise in regulatory compliance and internal auditing. His reputation for thoroughness had made him invaluable during several high-profile investigations. I received some concerning documents yesterday, he said, gesturing to a manila folder on his desk. Feedback forms with your electronic signature. The content is troubling. I sat across from him, studying his expression. Clark had always been direct in his communications. Today something felt different. His usual confidence seemed forced. I've been investigating those forms myself, I said. They're fabricated. Someone has been using my credentials to create false documents. Clark opened the folder and spread several printed pages across his desk. The feedback forms looked authentic, complete with proper formatting and digital signatures. But I recognized the subtle inconsistencies that had caught my attention the previous evening. The partnership committee takes these assessments seriously, Clark continued. If these represent your actual opinions about colleagues, we need to discuss the implications for your partnership candidacy. Clark, I never wrote these documents. Someone has compromised my account or gained administrative access to forge my digital signature. He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. That's a serious allegation. Do you have to support this claim? I placed the server logs on his desk. These access records show my account was active during times I was provably elsewhere. Court records, travel receipts, witness statements. I can document my whereabouts for every instance when these forms were allegedly created. Clark examined the printouts carefully. His expertise in compliance made him the logical person to investigate this type of digital fraud. We had collaborated on similar cases involving document authentication and electronic. This is sophisticated, he admitted. Whoever did this understood our systems well enough to avoid detection for months. The timing isn't coincidental, I said. These forms target specific attorneys competing for partnership. Someone is trying to manipulate the review process. Clark nodded slowly. I'll need to conduct a formal investigation. This involves potential violations of our ethics policies and possibly criminal fraud. We spent the next hour reviewing the BITHA. Clark's questions were thorough and professional. He understood the technical aspects of digital document creation and the legal implications of forged signatures. His compliance background made him uniquely qualified to handle this investigation. I'll need to secure your computer and phone for forensic analysis, he said. Standard procedure for this type of investigation. I handed over my devices willingly. The forensic examination would prove my innocence and potentially identify the actual perpetrator. Clark's methodical approach gave me confidence that the truth would emerge. How long will the investigation take? I asked. 2 weeks minimum. The partnership committee meeting is next Thursday. I'll request a postponement of your candidacy review until we resolve this matter. Clark walked me to the elevator, his demeanor professional but supportive. Dominic, I want you to know that I believe your account of events. This appears to be a deliberate attempt to sabotage your partnership prospects. The elevator doors closed, and I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Clark's investigation would clear my name, but the damage to my reputation might already be irreversible. Partners would question my integrity even after the truth emerged. Over the following days, Clark kept me informed of his progress. The forensic analysis confirmed that my devices showed no of creating the fraudulent documents. The server logs revealed sophisticated manipulation of the document management system, requiring administrative privileges that I had never possessed. "We're dealing with someone who has extensive knowledge of our internal systems," Clark reported during one of our meetings. "The level of access required suggests an inside job." The investigation expanded to include all employees with administrative privileges. IT personnel, senior partners, and compliance staff underwent scrutiny. Clark's thoroughness impressed me, even as the process stretched into its second week. On Friday afternoon, Clark called me to his office for what he described as a final briefing. The investigation had reached its end, and he was ready to present his findings to the partnership committee. "I've identified the perpetrator," he said, his voice carrying an awe I hadn't heard before. I leaned, eager to learn who had orchestrated this elaborate scheme against me. Clark opened his desk drawer and removed a small recording device. "Before I reveal the findings, I need you to understand something about the nature of this investigation." The device clicked on, and I heard my own voice discussing confidential client matters with someone I couldn't identify. The conversation had never taken place, but the audio quality was convincing. "This is impossible," I said. "That recording is fabricated." Clark smiled, but the expression held no warmth. "Actually, Dominic, everything has been fabricated. The feedback forms, the server logs, even this investigation." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Clark hadn't been investigating the fraud. He had been orchestrating it from the beginning, using his compliance position to create an elaborate deception designed to destroy my partnership prospects and potentially my entire career. The recording device sat between us like in a trial that had already reached its verdict. Clark's admission hung in the air, transforming everything I thought I knew about the past 2 weeks. "You've been planning this for months," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. Clark leaned back in his chair, the mask of helpful compliance advisor finally discarded. 18 months, actually. Ever since the partnership committee started discussing your promotion to equity partner. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Clark had used his position as compliance advisor to access every system in the firm. Document management, billing records, client files, email servers. His administrative privileges had given him the keys to fabricate an entire conspiracy. The feedback forms were just the beginning, he continued. I needed something that would trigger an investigation, something that would put you under scrutiny while I prepared the real. I thought about the sophisticated nature of the scheme. The altered server logs, the fabricated audio recordings, the careful timing of each revelation. Clark had turned the firm's own security systems against me. Why? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Because you don't deserve what I've worked for, Clark said. You waltzed in here with your class action victories and your client relationships, expecting the partnership to hand you everything. I've been with this firm for 12 years, building the compliance department from nothing. The resentment in his voice was raw, years of perceived slights and professional jealousy finally exposed. Clark had watched other attorneys advance while he remained in what he saw as a support role, despite his crucial position in the firm's operations. I documented everything, I said, pulling out my phone. Every conversation we've had, every piece of you've shown me, it's all recorded. Clark's confidence wavered for the first time. That won't matter. I control the narrative here. The Prior-IID Hayamal Partnership Committee trusts my judgment on compliance matters. But I had been preparing for this moment since our first meeting. The suspicious timing of the investigation, Clark's unusual access to technical details, his eagerness to control every aspect of the process. I had started recording our conversations after the third day. I also contacted the Banking and Investment Fraud Committee yesterday, I said. They're sending internal legal auditor Deborah Clark to review your findings. The color drained from Clark's face. An external audit would expose the fabricated immediately. Professional auditors would spot the inconsistencies that Clark had hidden from the firm's internal review process. "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I stood up, placing my own recording device on his desk. "Actually, I can prove everything, including this conversation." The next morning, Deborah Clark arrived with a team of forensic accountants and digital investigators. The Banking and Investment Fraud Committee had taken my complaint seriously, particularly given the sophisticated nature of the alleged document manipulation. Clark's investigation moved with methodical precision. Within hours, they had identified the digital fingerprints Clark had left throughout the firm's systems. The fabricated server logs contained metadata inconsistencies that revealed their true creation dates. The audio recordings showed signs of digital splicing that became obvious under professional analysis. Mr. Stanfield used his administrative access to create a false paper trail spanning several months, Clark explained to the emergency partnership meeting. The sophistication of the scheme suggests extensive premeditation and detailed knowledge of the firm's internal systems. The partners listened in stunned silence as Clark outlined the full scope of Clark's deception. The fabricated feedback forms, the altered billing records, the manipulated case management logs. Every piece of against me had been carefully constructed using the firm's own technology. "The financial impact extends beyond the immediate fraud," Clark continued. "Mr. Stanfield's actions have potentially compromised client confidentiality and exposed the firm to significant liability." Senior partner Penelope Stanfield asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we contain this situation? The firm faced a nightmare scenario. A compliance advisor had used his position to orchestrate an elaborate fraud against a partner. The potential for client lawsuits, regulatory sanctions, and reputational damage was enormous. "We need to notify the state bar immediately," Clark said. "This level of misconduct requires formal disciplinary action." Clark was escorted from the building that afternoon. The Illinois State Bar opened an investigation within days, and criminal charges followed shortly after. The sophistication of the scheme and Clark's abuse of his position as a compliance officer elevated the case to felony level. The firm implemented immediate changes to prevent similar incidents. Administrative privileges were restructured, audit trails were enhanced, and external compliance reviews became mandatory. The partnership committee also established new protocols for investigating internal complaints. My own situation required careful handling. The firm's clients needed reassurance that their cases remained secure despite the compliance breach. Several major clients demanded detailed explanations of the security measures being implemented. "We're conducting a comprehensive review of all cases that Clark had access to," I explained to our largest class action client. "Every document, every billing record, every communication log." The review process took 3 months. Fortunately, Clark's scheme had focused specifically on destroying my reputation rather than compromising client matters. His fabricated had been designed to make me appear incompetent and untrustworthy, but he hadn't actually interfered with casework. The state bar hearing took place in December. Clark's attorney argued for leniency, claiming professional stress and personal financial difficulties had driven his actions. The disciplinary committee was unimpressed. "Mr. Stanfield's conduct represents a fundamental breach of the trust placed in compliance professionals," the committee chair stated. "His actions endangered not only his target but the entire legal profession's reputation." Clark received a permanent disbarment and faced criminal prosecution for fraud and computer crimes. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in federal prison, noting the sophisticated nature of the scheme and the potential harm to the legal system. The firm's clients gradually regained confidence as the new security measures proved effective. My partnership track remained intact, though the experience had changed my perspective on internal firm dynamics. "You handled this situation with remarkable professionalism," Penelope Stanfield told me during my year review. "Your methodical approach to documenting the investigation probably saved the firm from much worse consequences." The compliment felt hollow after everything that had happened. Clark's betrayal had revealed how vulnerable even experienced attorneys could be to internal threats. The legal profession's emphasis on trust and collegiality created blind spots that sophisticated bad actors could exploit. I began helping other attorneys who faced similar situations. Word spread through the legal community about my experience with internal fraud, and several colleagues sought my advice when they encountered suspicious circumstances at their own firms. The work felt meaningful in a way that traditional legal practice sometimes didn't. These attorneys faced not just professional threats, but personal devastation. Their trust in colleagues and institutions had been shattered, much like mine had been. By spring, I was consulting regularly on cases involving attorney misconduct and internal firm fraud. The specialized knowledge I had gained through my ordeal proved valuable to both individual attorneys and law firms seeking to strengthen their internal controls. The irony wasn't lost on me. Clark's attempt to destroy my career had ultimately opened new professional opportunities and given me expertise in an increasingly important area of legal practice. 12 months later, I sat in my new office overlooking Grant Park. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hardwood floors of the space I had leased after leaving the partnership. The transition hadn't been easy. Leaving a major firm meant abandoning the security of steady income and institutional support. But the Clark Stanfield investigation had taught me that security could be an illusion, especially when it depended on trusting the wrong people. My new practice focused exclusively on attorney professional responsibility and law firm internal investigations. The phone rang constantly with calls from attorneys facing ethics complaints, partners discovering financial irregularities, and firms needing independent reviews of their compliance systems. The work required the same analytical skills I had developed in commercial litigation, but the stakes felt more personal. Every case involved someone's professional reputation and livelihood. The attorneys who sought my help often displayed the same mixture of confusion and betrayal I had experienced when discovering Clark's scheme. "We never thought it could happen here," they would say. The phrase had become so common that I considered making it my unofficial motto. Last month, the Illinois State Bar Association invited me to speak at their annual ethics conference. The presentation covered digital security in law firms and the warning signs of internal fraud. 300 attorneys attended, asking detailed questions about case management system vulnerabilities and document authentication protocols. The audience's engagement confirmed what I had suspected for months. Clark's type of sophisticated internal fraud was becoming more common as law firms increased their reliance on digital systems without adequately securing them. My consulting work had expanded beyond individual cases. Several major firms now retained me to conduct annual security audits of their internal systems. The reviews typically uncovered minor vulnerabilities before they became major problems. The irony remained striking. Clark's attempt to sabotage my career had ultimately created a more fulfilling professional path than I had ever imagined possible. Yesterday, I received a call from a partner at a New York firm facing a situation remarkably similar to what I had experienced. Someone had been manipulating their case management system to create false billing entries and altered client communications. "How did you know to look for the metadata inconsistencies?" the partner asked during our consultation. The answer was simple. Experience had taught me that sophisticated fraud always left digital fingerprints. The key was knowing where to look and having the patience to follow the trail wherever it led. I began a firm offering law firm exit planning for partners seeking to leave toxic environments or start independent practices. The service filled a genuine need in the legal community, where attorneys often felt trapped by financial obligations and partnership agreements. The work brought me into contact with attorneys from across the country who had faced various forms of professional betrayal. Their stories reinforced my belief that the legal profession's emphasis on collegiality, while generally positive, could create dangerous blind spots. Clark Stanfield had been released from federal prison 6 months ago. According to the bar records, he had moved to Florida and was working as a paralegal while pursuing reinstatement of his law license. The application would likely be denied, but the legal system required him to exhaust all available remedies. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. The entire situation had been a waste of talent and potential that had damaged everyone involved. The afternoon mail brought a letter from Penelope Stanfield at my former firm. She had been promoted to managing partner and wanted to discuss retaining my services for a comprehensive security review of their systems. The request represented a form of professional vindication, but more importantly, it offered an opportunity to help prevent other attorneys from experiencing what I had endured. Outside my office window, the city continued its relentless pace. Attorneys hurried between courthouses and client meetings, most of them trusting that their colleagues and institutions would support rather than betray them. That trust remained essential to the legal profession's function. But my experience had taught me that it needed to be balanced with appropriate skepticism and robust verification systems. The phone rang again. Another attorney facing another crisis of professional trust. I answered on the second ring, ready to help guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.